Zoe is taken to their house, tied down on a bed with barbed wire, both hands and both feet bound. Keep Zoe as his own personal plaything, to torture and abuse every single day. Meanwhile, Trey shoves a gun into Zoe's mouth and begins assaulting her. One by one, they take turns, making it clear they want to show just how merciless they truly are. During all of this, Zoe catches a glimpse of someone watching from the shadows. To keep Zoe as his own personal plaything, to torture and abuse every single day, again and again until she collapses right there. Zoe dies. At the start of the story, we meet a girl named Zoe who is incredibly excited as she heads over to her boyfriend's place. To make the day even more special, her older sister gifts her their late father's most prized car. When Zoe says goodbye to her mom, we learn something important about her. She's not just sweet and innocent, she's also deaf and mute. She can neither speak nor hear. But holding the keys to her father's car, Zoe is absolutely beaming with joy as she sets off to surprise her boyfriend. Along the way, she keeps stopping to take selfies and sending them one by one to her boyfriend Dan. Dan, on his end, is just as impatient. He's already arranging flowers to welcome her, grinning every time a new photo pops up on his screen. But then Zoe's joy hits a wall. She comes across a dead dog on the road, brutally mutilated, left there like a warning sign. Shaken to her core, she forces herself back on the road and tries to move on. A little further down, she stops near an antique shop filled with expensive collectibles, snaps a quick photo, and gets back behind the wheel. Just as she's about to send the photo to Dan, a man stumbles out of nowhere right in front of her car. She slams the brakes just in time. She steps out to check on him, and that's when everything falls apart. From out of nowhere, a group of ruthless men are chasing another man down the road. Before Zoe can even process what's happening, they run him over with their car, crushing him with sickening force right in front of her eyes. Zoe's fear skyrockets. She knows she's witnessed something she was never supposed to see. Panicking, she tries to quickly reverse and take the injured man with her. But the criminals surround her car before she can escape. She fights back, she pushes, she struggles, but it's no use. One of the men, wearing a Western-style cap, spots the injured man inside Zoe's car. Without a second's hesitation, he drives his knife into him repeatedly until the man is dead. Zoe is traumatized, and before she can run, they close in on her. She manages to shove one of them and bolt, but a man named Trey shoots her in the leg. She hits the ground, and from here, the scene shifts somewhere darker. Zoe is taken to their house, tied down on a bed with barbed wire, both hands and both feet bound. She's soaked in blood, but these men's cruelty has no limits. Among them, the man in the cap seems visibly uneasy. Something is gnawing at him. He's worried things might spiral out of control. Meanwhile, Trey shoves a gun into Zoe's mouth and begins assaulting her. One by one, they take turns, making it clear they want to show just how merciless they truly are. During all of this, Zoe catches a glimpse of someone watching from the shadows. Trey then shows Zoe a collection of human skulls. He tells her that most of them were killed by his great-grandfather, and that he's proudly walking in those very footsteps. He's breaking her down, not just physically, but mentally. He points to one skull in particular and announces, "This is Apache Chief Mangus Coloradas." He explains that Mangus once tried to trap his great-grandfather, but his great-grandfather killed him so brutally that he kept the skull as a trophy, proof of his family's power. And now Trey, carrying on that legacy of savagery, plans to keep Zoe as his own personal plaything, to torture and abuse every single day. Meanwhile, Dan is still waiting. Zoe never arrived. Going through the photos she sent him, he notices a road sign in one of them, and from it, he figures out which route she must have taken. He tracks down the New Mexico Police Department's number and files a missing person report. Back at the house, the men are playing cards through the night, but the man in the cap is growing increasingly tense. He argues that keeping Zoe alive is a ticking time bomb. If she's found here, they're all finished. Trey, however, refuses to let her go. So Trey proposes a card game. If Trey wins, he keeps her. If the cap guy wins, they kill her and dump the body. Either way, Zoe has no chance of getting out alive. The game begins. Time passes. Trey loses. Zoe is still on that bed, barely alive. But suddenly, she stirs awake. Driven by survival instinct, she starts tearing her hands free from the barbed wire. Her hands are shredded, bleeding, completely mangled. Before she can escape, the man in the cap spots her and gives chase. Zoe runs, but she's far too injured. He catches her quickly and drives his knife into her stomach again and again until she collapses right there. Zoe dies. Dan arrives in New Mexico and checks into a hotel. He plans to go to the police first thing in the morning to report Zoe missing. The next morning, a man out walking his dog in the hills spots something disturbing, a human hand sticking out of the earth. They had killed Zoe and buried her out there. The man digs her out and tries to give her water. She doesn't drink, because she's already dead. He takes her body home. That night, he grinds up herbs into a paste, applies it to her wounds, and begins chanting, performing an ancient ritual. This man is a shaman, and as he works, he discovers the full truth of what happened to Zoe. Then, the impossible. Zoe starts breathing. Her entire body lifts off the ground, and suddenly her eyes turn completely black. Zoe's spirit nearly attacks the shaman, but he slams her back down before she can. Then at midnight, Zoe's body rises on its own. She walks out onto the streets, moving unnaturally like something has taken the wheel. She finds a phone booth and calls Dan. The moment he picks up, he breaks down. "Where are you? I came all the way to New Mexico looking for you. I'll come to you first thing in the morning." Right at that moment, a police car pulls up beside her. She walks toward the officer, and then freezes. It's one of them, one of the men who tortured her. Her expression shifts. Something changes in her face entirely. She follows him into the bar he enters. When he turns around and sees her, the color drains from his face. What he's looking at isn't the girl he left for dead. Her face is something out of a nightmare. She takes a bottle and drives it straight into his stomach, then reaches inside and tears his intestines out with her bare hands, pulling them further and further out. The bar owner loads a shotgun and tries to shoot her. She hurls a chair at him. Another man gets his eyes gouged out. One of Trey's associates, recognizing her, drops to his knees and begs for mercy. Zoe shows him none. She puts him down. Dan can't take it anymore. He tracks the location of Zoe's call and races over. When he arrives, police are already on the scene. They block him from entering. Dan tells them his girlfriend called from this location just an hour ago. He tells them she's been missing for 3 days and that he already filed a report. The police tell him they'll look into it tomorrow and send him away. Just then, Dan spots Trey. He walks up to him and asks if he's seen his girlfriend, a girl named Zoe who's been missing for 3 days. Trey and his crew are shaken because they know what's happening inside that bar. And they know they buried Zoe with their own hands. If she's dead, how did she make a phone call? Panic sets in. They decide to pack up and leave town immediately. Somewhere in a garage, Zoe's body rises. She walks to a mirror and looks at herself, and she starts to cry. Then the white sheets behind her fall away, revealing rows of old tools and weapons, and among them, a bow and arrow. She takes it, because this time Zoe is not running, she's hunting. The men are loading up their vehicles to leave. One of Trey's associates steps outside and stops dead in his tracks. Every tire on his car is punctured, shot through with arrows. He grabs his phone to warn Trey. He never gets the chance. Zoe steps out in front of him. An arrow goes through his leg. He hits the ground, and she buries arrow after arrow into him until he stops moving. She got one, but her revenge isn't finished yet. Here we notice a pattern. Whenever Zoe goes after Trey's men, her eyes turn completely black. She shifts from a wounded girl into something far more powerful, something ancient. Zoe goes back to the shaman. He steps out of his van to find her sitting right there. He tells her, "I healed you as best I could. When I saw what those men did to you, I tried to bring you back. But when you came back, you didn't come back alone," he explains. A man named Mangus Coloradus was butchered 100 years ago, killed brutally by a white man. That white man was Trey's great-grandfather. When the shaman was stitching Zoe's soul back into her body, the restless spirit of Mangus Coloradus, who had been wandering that land for a century, unable to find peace, saw his chance. He fused with Zoe's soul. Now they share one body. 2 souls, 2 unfinished vengeances, 1 vessel. The shaman warns her, "This body won't hold much longer. Finish what you came back to do." Dan, back in his room, stares at the ring Zoe gave him. He slams his fists into the wall, barely holding himself together. He's fully accepted it now. She's gone. What he doesn't know is that Zoe is right outside, looking in, crying for him. She notices his mirror, and written across it are the words, "Please forget me." Dan sees it, and he knows she's here, she's close. But before the moment can breathe, Trey smashes into the room, beats Dan unconscious, and throws him into his car. An arrow rips through the throat of Trey's associate, fired by Zoe. All 3 of them see her. They floor it. Zoe gives chase. She leaps onto the moving car and gets into a brutal brawl with one of Trey's men on the roof. She tries to drive a broken arrow into him, but he's too strong. He pulls out a knife and stabs her in the stomach. The same spot, the same move. This time, she doesn't even flinch. Zoe grabs him and slams his head into the side mirror. She picks up his knife, raises it, and then Trey hits the brakes. Hard. Zoe goes flying off the car and crashes onto the road. Trey reverses the car and drives it over her body. She gets up. She just sits up like nothing happened. Trey's mind breaks. He doesn't understand what she is anymore. He takes off. In the next scene, the shaman watches from inside his van as Zoe calmly resets her shattered arm. No pain, no hesitation. Then she tears open her stomach, pulls out her intestines, packs the cavity with sand and gravel, and seals it shut with tape. At that moment, the spirit of Mangus Coloradus steps out of her body, blazing with fury, burning with a century of unfinished business. Her bow is broken. So Mangus reaches into his van and pulls out the weapons he used 100 years ago, tools forged for war. He places his handcrafted war necklace around Zoe's neck. She's armed, she's ready. Trey takes Dan up to his crew's mountain stronghold. One of his men, still with an arrow in his throat, is writhing in agony. He crawls to Trey and begs to be taken to a hospital. Trey refuses. Moving now means getting caught. He sits Dan down and explains everything. He tells him what they did to Zoe, how they killed her, how they buried her, and when Dan showed him Zoe's photo and told him she was his girlfriend, Trey immediately understood. The best way to bait a dead girl is to capture the person she loves most. Dan collapses. He falls apart completely. Then Trey notices one of his men trying to flee, the one with the arrow in his neck, bleeding out, panicking. Trey raises his gun to shoot him. and Zoe comes out of nowhere. She drives a metal rod straight through the fleeing man's throat and flips the car over with a single strike. He dies crushed underneath it. Trey and what's left of his crew are now convinced there's something inside her. Something beyond human. Trey opens fire. She dodges and disappears into the darkness. His men fan out to find her. One of them creeps forward and walks right into an anchor. She wraps it around his neck and saws through it until his head is separated from his body. Another spots her and raises his gun. She drops through the ceiling and ends him before he can fire a single shot. The man in the cap moves through the building searching for her and stumbles onto a sight that stops him cold. One of his friends is hanging from the rafters, intestines pulled out and used as the rope, and then she appears in front of him. He shoots. The spirit of Mongus Coloradas slashes back with his blade, cutting him deep. Trey steps inside and sees Zoe tearing open the Catman's chest. She pulls out his heart, turns to face Trey directly, and eats it, right in front of him, like a creature from another world. Trey's sanity fractures. Dan, in his own spiral of grief and rage, screams into the darkness at his dead girlfriend. Don't let any of them go. Don't spare a single one. The sheriff arrives. Someone tipped off that Trey had kidnapped Dan and brought him here. Trey shoots the sheriff, injuring him, and steals a car to flee. Zoe reaches Trey's mother's home. She finds Trey's younger brother there. He's taken his own life. The bloodline of Trey's great-grandfather is almost extinct now. Only Trey and his mother remain. Together, Zoe and the spirit of Mangus Coloradas complete their reckoning. Then comes Trey. He arrives looking for the skull of Mangus Coloradas, the trophy his great-grandfather kept. He scans the room and finds Zoe, standing there, tossing the skull casually in her hand. Trey pulls out a chainsaw from his car. He revs it up and swings at her. She strikes back against the blade over and over, trying to break it. Then she drops low, tears into his leg, and sieves his arm clean off. He crashes to the ground. Before she can finish him, Trey drives the chainsaw through her abdomen, through and through. But even before the two halves of her body can come apart, she raises the ancient weapon in her hand and takes Trey's head clean off his shoulders. He's dead. Dan arrives. He finds Zoe at the bottom of a pit, her lower body completely severed. She looks up at him, and in sign language, slowly and clearly, she tells him, "I love you." Dan crumbles. Tears streaming down his face, voice breaking, he signs back, "I love you too." And then, with trembling hands, he pours kerosene over her. He smashes the bulb above, and he sets her free. The spirit of Mangus Coloradas was inside her when the flames took hold. Burned by the hands of someone who truly loved her, both souls are finally released. They drift apart, moving in opposite directions, into the beyond. In the final scene, the shaman stands before Dan. He says, "What you did was right. No one else could have done it but you. Zoe's soul is somewhere far from this cruel world now, or sacred, and she'll be waiting for you there."